This is a new one for me. I was editing the story of Cliff Doe on my laptop when I accidentally reloaded a page. It had a name. So in this case, they overnight had identified Cliff Doe, which is pretty cool. The crazy thing of this story is that I wrote it up about 4 months ago. I just recorded the audio last week. I considered just tossing my original piece out, but instead I'm going to show the original story along with the identified information on the same person. The Cliff Doe. In October of 2003, a hunter found a human skull in the woods near Marion, Montana, which is a tiny town in the northern portion of the state, up near Canada. 17 years later, it remains one of Flathead County's only unidentified deaths, and because of his location, he was given the name Cliff Doe. Do me a favor and comment how you feel about random nicknames for John or Jane Does. Some are clever, such as Disco Dan, Cliff, or Sahara Sue, and maybe a little less respectful like Rackman, Little Miss Nobody, or Septic Sam. Many of the names stem from the police caring, like Precious Doe. Yet other areas just name them John or Jane Doe with a generic area and date. I have mixed thoughts on this and I'm curious what other people are thinking. I'd love to know your thoughts on the Doe nicknames. I've seen some people comment that the cutesy names are disrespectful. For me, anything that shows they were individuals worthy of a nickname seems more respectful than generic branding. On October 26, 2003, a husband and wife were hunting in a wooded area off Redgate Road. As they hiked through the area, they stopped at the top of the cliff to take a break, and it was there they found a beat-up bag. When they looked inside, they found the Smith & Wesson gun. They found themselves joking about how strange it was to leave a gun where they found it, and took off exploring, joking that the gun's owner was probably at the bottom of the cliff, not actually expecting they would find him. But that is indeed where they found the skull of the man now known as Cliff, along with a shoe and a water bottle. They took note of the spot and went out to the highway to get cell service so they could contact the authorities. Authorities would eventually locate bone fragments that had been collected by scavenging animals, many inside a rodent nest. They found scattered items, a fanny pack, an electronic poker game, and sunglasses. He also had a book called Phases of Gravity by Dan Simmons, which was a novel published in 1989. The only clue to his demise was an outward bevel at the edge of the side of his skull, which may have been the cause of death. They believe it was most likely the sign of a gunshot wound. However, blunt force trauma couldn't be ruled out, as some of the skull bones were missing. Also, he took a great fall. The strange thing is that the gun was found inside of the bag, which cast doubt on suicide, since he would have had to put it back in the bag when he was done. The newest coin found with him was date stamped 1990. The bottle of Aleve was likely purchased between June 1994, when the pain reliever was first distributed, and January of 1997, when Bear took over for Procter & Gamble and changed the bottle. The Adidas shoes he was wearing were manufactured in May of 1995. The pistol itself was first produced by Smith & Wesson in 1987, and the last record of who owned it was in 1994, when it was sold to a man living in Utah, who said he pawned it in 1994 or 1995 during a divorce. The totality of the evidence suggests he died between May of 1995 and October of 2002. In the following years, there have been a few clues. Once Cliff was found, someone called in to say they found an abandoned vehicle near the area on Redgate Road years earlier. The vehicle was towed to the landfill, but when authorities checked, they couldn't find any paperwork or notation of the VIN number, or even what kind of vehicle it was. In 2011, they tried again, and they found even more bones and a sock inside of another rat's nest. They were hoping to find a more significant clue, but nothing else turned up. The DNA Doe Project took this case on, but currently there isn't anyone listed in GEDmatch close enough to his bloodline to lead to his name. That is why it's so important for anyone wanting to help in searches like this to upload their DNA. It's why my own DNA is part of GEDmatch. Previously, the closest genetic match to Cliff is 70 centimorgans away, which is pretty distant, possibly half third cousins. For a comparison, My mother and daughter have about 3,500 centimorgans in common with me. The next closest match to me is 90 centimorgans, and I have no idea who that person even is, even though the name is on there. Please call the number on your screen if you think you know who Cliff may be. Cliff Doe has gone unidentified for 18 years. The Cliff Doe, identified as Stephen Gooch. Stephen was 29 and living in Bothell, Washington in 1995. He'd headed to San Diego for a visit and phoned his family to say that he was heading to Las Vegas. This was the last time they would ever speak to him again. For whatever reason, Stephen instead traveled to Marion, Montana. As I explained, the Flathead County Sheriff's Office partnered with the DNA Doe Project on this one, finally matching him with a man reported missing in 1995. So many cases like this include someone who ends up in a place that they weren't expected to be. Marion, Montana is 1,400 miles away from where he was last known to be, and 500 miles away from his home in Washington. When they began running the DNA, they believed him to possibly be from Kentucky, Indiana, or Tennessee, based on the matches they were finding, and the surnames that came up. It definitely shows how important the DNA uploads to GEDmatch are. As a society, we frequently relocate from area to area. It turns out this wasn't easy. It took 3 years of trying to solve this case, and it took one volunteer alone over 2,000 hours of research. In the last round, they had called a number of relatives and hoped that they would call back to see if they may know who the person was. And the first one to call back was Stephen Gooch's father. And they asked him if he was missing anyone. He said, "My son." And that answer wasn't just a gift to the investigation, it was a gift to his father. He'd been looking for him all those years. This is the extent of the information released so far. I won't go back over the circumstances, but I wanted to say I hope that they won't just write this off as him taking his own life. The weapon was found inside of a sack. It's a convenient conclusion, but there's no way he could go over the cliff and also replace the gun in his knapsack. While there may have been an additional weapon, none was found. Stephen Gooch was missing for 26 years. He was a John Doe for 18. The Crittendon County John Doe. For some reason, the decedent was walking in the middle of I-40 in the eastbound lane near the I-55 junction, close to West Memphis, Arkansas, when an 18-wheeler came upon him. The driver did all he could to avoid him, but it was out of his hands and he struck the man. Very little is known about the man. He had 2 packs of cigarettes on him, one Lucky Brand, and the other Salem. He had $30 in cash. The only possible identifiers are a large gold-colored belt buckle with the name Walt and a gold ring with a clear stone. If you think you may know who this man is, you may want to look at the postmortem photos available online, as I don't show them on this channel, but it's possible they could help. His age was estimated to be 30 to 60. Based on the photos, I'd be shocked if he was on the lower end of that. If the estimate is correct, his family is looking for someone born between 1923 and 1953. He was around 5'6" and wore dentures on his upper plate. Coroner's number is located on the screen. The Crittendon County John Doe has gone unidentified for 38 years. The Ala Moana Park Jane Doe, also known as Awe. This Jane Doe was suffering from severe schizophrenia and was unable to say her name. She went by Awe, which spelled in her case is A-H. She was homeless in Ala Moana Park and was eventually taken to a state hospital in Lihue in 2004, as she was too weak to walk. She would end up being cared for through the hospital until she passed away from natural causes on April 27, 2013. They had some information on her. She'd likely been living in Hawaii since 1994. She had no teeth and she was a smoker. She enjoyed reading and she had a Canadian accent. She was around 5'5" to 5'7", tall and thin, around 112 pounds. They believe she was 55 to 65 when she was found, which would mean her family was looking for someone likely born in the vicinity of 1939 to 1949. Has gone unidentified for 17 years. That's it for today. Thanks, everybody. Take care of yourselves and each other.